While the days are still warm here in Ohio, I can see the signs of fall creeping in everywhere. But does that mean that September is the end of the gardening season for us folks growing in Zone 6? Absolutely not. There is still a good assortment of things that can be planted in most Zone 6 growing areas during the month of September. Now, the key factor for planting in September is knowing your first estimated fall frost date. I talk about this in detail in the August video, so be sure to check that one out. But here in my Ohio garden, I generally use October 15th for planting purposes. So everything that I'm going to be planting this month is frost tolerant and cold hardy, but I do want to give those things time to get established before those temperatures really drop. Now, based on your growing area and your frost dates, you may be able to push your plantings even later, and the use of season extenders like row covers, mini greenhouses, high tunnels, can extend your season a little bit as well. But as for me, I am focusing on two big groups of planting during the month of September. The first, as I mentioned, are my cold hardy, frost tolerant vegetable crops. Now, for all of the vegetable crops I'm going to mention today, I focus on getting them planted from seed in the garden during the first 2 weeks of September. And that is because, as I mentioned, I want to give them enough time to get established before the freezing temperatures set in. The first, and perhaps one of the best vegetables to plant in September, are radishes. Now, depending on the variety, radishes can mature as quickly as 30 days, and they are cold tolerant, so it is really an ideal crop for September. Now, here I've got a planting of Roatan radishes, which I've really liked and have done really well for me in both spring and fall. And another one that I like to plant in the fall is a variety called Rivoli. Another root crop that is great for planting in September are salad turnips. Now, these are going to differ from your big, heavy storage turnips. Some of my favorite varieties of salad turnips to grow include Hakurai, Fukukomachi, and a variety called Amelie. And these are superb when grown in the fall because the cool temperatures really bring out the sweetness. They are crisp and juicy, absolutely ideal for planting in September. I'm typically sowing my very last planting of beets as well. Now, for planting beets this late, I focus on varieties that are specifically bred for baby production. So two of my favorites are Pablo and baby beet. And the advantage of the baby beets is that they will achieve that nice round root shape and a mature flavor even at a baby size, which is not the case for every variety of beet. Now, with a full-size beet and with carrots, in some Zone 6 planting areas, you can get away with planting those in September. I don't have great luck with them here. The temperatures just get too cold in October and our days get too short. But that's going to be one that's definitely going to be specific to your Zone 6 growing area. So if you're a Zone 6 grower and you have good luck with carrots and full-size beets planted in September, I'd love to hear from you. When are you planting, and are there specific varieties that do well when fall planted in your area? And let's not forget the leafy greens, always a wonderful group of vegetables to plant in the cool season. And this is going to include things like lettuce, spinach, arugula, endive, escarole, collards, chard, kale. Those things particularly for baby greens, because in some areas it's hard to get a full big plant established when you're planting in September, but definitely for baby greens they're ideal. They also will often overwinter well in Zone 6 areas, particularly with some kind of a row cover. Of course, you have your mizunas, mustards, tatsoi, and don't forget the extraordinarily cold tolerant greens like mash or corn salad, and claytonia, which is also known as miner's lettuce. Now, even within this category as a group, there are going to be varieties which are more cold tolerant than others. For example, there are some varieties of lettuce that I have had overwinter in my garden with no protection at all, and there are some that will melt away after the first frost. As a generalization, I find that the varieties with these really tender, buttery leaves, like butterhead, don't do particularly well with the extreme cold. But some of the tougher romaines, winter density is a favorite of mine, as well as some of the red leaf types. I've had great luck with red velvet and dark rhodon. They tend to hold up a little better in the cold for me. Now, if you're curious about more specific varieties, I will always point you to Johnny's Seed. They are a great resource for information like this. They have a whole section about the best varieties to plant in the fall. Talk to your friends and neighbors, see if they have varieties that have worked really well for them, or drop a line in the comments below. I'm always happy to give more information about the varieties that have worked well for me. And let's not forget the cold tolerant herbs. Cilantro, dill, and parsley are incredibly cold tolerant, and I will often plant those into September. And green onions or scallions are a great crop to plant this time of year as well. And green onions will typically overwinter for me with no protection whatsoever. So it's a really nice crop to have through the entire winter, and one of the first things you can harvest in the coming spring. Now, the other big focus in September for me are the cover crops. So in September, I am focusing on clearing as much of my main season stuff out of the garden as I can. So anything that is no longer productive, anything that is diseased, anything that I have already picked and canned, frozen, dehydrated, stewed, roasted, put away so much produce that I will be good until the year 2025 from. Tomatoes, I'm looking at you. I will get rid of some of those plants and clear up as much ground space as I can for planting cover crops. And this is just to ensure that I have as much cover as possible going into those cold, barren winter months. Now, there are a few cover crops that you can get away with planting here into October, but the majority of cool season cover crops are best planted for me in September, usually about mid-September. Now, the first one that I want to mention is my absolute favorite. You've heard me talk about it before, my beloved tiller radish. And this is going to be best planted 4 to 10 weeks prior to your killing frost. And this is my favorite because A, I have clay soil, and there is nothing else like a tiller radish to burrow down and bust up clay. But also because when fall planted, the tiller radish will put down these huge roots. It's semi-cold hardy, but by about the middle of the winter, the plants will die. The roots will start to break down in the soil. And by the time the spring comes, all I have to do is come into my bed, clear some of the residue away, and I can plant directly in that bed. It does an amazing job of doing all of the prep work in my clay soil for me. Another amazing fall cover crop is winter rye. Now, this is a very, very cold tolerant crop, and this will resume growth in the spring. It will not winter kill, and it will have to be terminated in the spring prior to planting. But it is an excellent option for providing ground coverage all through the winter months. And winter rye is one of the cover crops that you can get away with planting very, very late in the season. So just 4 to 6 weeks before your hard killing frost. Now, that's a hard frost. That's not even your first frost. So I've actually planted winter rye after my first frost date, so after the middle of October, and had success with it. So that's one where if you don't want to pull your crops out early, but you still want to get a fall cover crop in, rye is a great option. Now, annual rye is another crop that can be planted in the fall, but that one you have to get in a little earlier, so 5 to 7 weeks before that hard frost for annual ryegrass. Oats, Austrian winter peas, and hairy vetch are 3 more great fall cover crops, and I actually love those 3 in combination. And those I will typically plant fall. Also, very early in the spring, I've had great luck with that cover mixture. Now, if you're going to do the mix, shoot for about 6 to 8 weeks before that first hard frost. I typically have really good results when I plant about the middle of September. Now, you can certainly do any of those covers by themselves, and they all offer great benefits, but I find that that mixture of 3 really complements each component in the mix. We've also got all the clovers. Now, each type of clover has a little bit of a different usage, but all of them can be planted in September. So crimson clover is probably my favorite. Just, if nothing else, it is spectacularly beautiful in the spring. And both it and yellow sweet clover are best planted about 6 to 8 weeks before that first hard killing frost. Now, if you're doing white clover more as a perennial ground cover, it is best established in the fall as well, but you want to go about 5 to 7 weeks before that first heavy frost. And it's not a seed, but I did want to mention I am transplanting one crop in September, and those are my overwintering onions. Now those I will start from seed at the beginning of August, and I aim for transplanting them out to the garden about September 5th. And I'd love to hear from you. If you are a Zone 6 gardener, share with me in the comments below what you are planting during the month of September. And if you find this video helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel to catch next month's episode of what I am planting in October. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.